Lieutenant Sarah Chen stifled a yawn as she monitored the deep space communication arrays during her graveyard shift at United Earth Space Command headquarters. The neural implant at the base of her skull tingled, processing the endless stream of background radiation and signal noise from thousands of automated buoys scattered throughout human space. The coffee at her station had long gone cold, forgotten during her 6th straight hour of monitoring. Standard protocol required human oversight of the AI systems, even though nothing interesting had happened in the 3 years she'd been assigned to this position. The most excitement she'd ever had was a false alarm from a pulsar's unexpected radiation burst. That's when her neural implant caught something different, a pattern in what should have been random static. The sensation was like tasting color or smelling sound, a synesthetic experience unique to neural interfaces processing anomalous data. "Computer, isolate frequency band omega 7.3, she commanded, sitting up straighter. The holoscreen before her flickered, displaying a waveform that pulsed with an unnatural regularity. Enhancement Protocol Delta, focus on amplitude variations. The signal clarified, and Chen's eyes widened. This wasn't random noise or natural phenomena. It was an encoded message using radio waves, a technology most civilizations had abandoned centuries ago. As her implant helped her process the data, the message began to take shape. To all spacefaring species of hardy origin, this is an emergency broadcast from the Centauri Alliance. Our worlds face extinction. The swarm devours everything in its path. Our weapons are ineffective. Our shields fail. We require immediate assistance from species evolved on high-gravity worlds. Send us your monsters. Send us those who evolved facing death. Only the children of harsh worlds can save us now. Attached coordinates follow." Chen's fingers flew over her haptic interface, running every authentication protocol she knew. The signal was genuine, originating from a region of space well beyond human-explored territory. Her heart raced as she realized the implications. This wasn't just first contact with an alien civilization. This was a desperate plea for help from a species that somehow knew about the unique conditions that shaped humanity. "Lieutenant Chen to command," she called out, her voice steady despite her excitement. "Priority 1 signal intercept. Requesting immediate superior officer review." Within minutes, her quiet monitoring station transformed into a hub of frantic activity. Senior officers materialized through quantum teleporters, their neural implants already processing the signal data she'd flagged. Questions flew rapid fire. When did the signal originate? What's the distance to source? Any signs of tampering or deception? Chen handled each query with precision, her training kicking in despite the unprecedented situation. But one question from Admiral Santos stopped everyone cold. Why specifically request high-gravity species? The room fell silent as intelligence officers pulled up everything humanity knew about evolution on Earth compared to theoretical models of life on other worlds. Earth, they all knew, was classified as a Class 12 death world, a planet so inherently hostile to life that the very fact humanity had evolved there defied conventional wisdom. "Look at these atmospheric readings from the signal source," Chen pointed out, her implant highlighting relevant data streams. "They're home systems. They're all garden worlds. Class 2 or 3 at most. Minimal tectonic activity, low gravity, stable climate patterns." She paused, letting the implications sink in. "Sir, they're looking for species that evolved facing constant threats. They're looking for survivors." Admiral Santos nodded slowly, his augmented eyes scanning the data. "And they found us. The monsters they're looking for. They're human beings." A junior officer spoke up, his voice unsure. "Sir, are we really considering responding? This could be a trap or worse." Santos turned to Chen. "Lieutenant, you found this signal. What's your analysis?" Chen stood straighter, her mind racing through the possibilities. "Sir, if this is a trap, it's the most elaborate one in human history. The signal uses obsolete technology we barely monitor anymore. The desperation in the message. It's not just in the words. It's encoded in the very way they're transmitting. They're broadcasting on all frequencies, using massive power, risking detection from whatever's hunting them. She took a deep breath. This feels real, sir. And if it is, we might be the only ones who can help. Santos was quiet for a long moment, studying the continuous stream of data from the signal. Finally, he straightened his uniform and made a decision that would change human history forever. Lieutenant Chen, congratulations on your promotion. You're now head of our first contact team. He turned to the room at large. Send word to the Security Council. Humanity just got its first call for help from the stars, and we're going to answer. As the room erupted into activity, Shen stared at the signal's waveform, still pulsing on her screen. Somewhere out there, peaceful worlds were facing extinction, and they had placed their hopes in the very thing that made humanity seem primitive to many, their evolution on a world that had tried to kill them every step of the way. The monsters of Earth were about to show the galaxy exactly what it meant to be a Deathworlder. Admiral James Okonjo stood before the United Nations Security Council, his dark eyes reflecting the holographic displays that filled the chamber. The footage playing before them showed scenes that made even hardened politicians flinch. Entire worlds being systematically torn apart by what looked like living machines. This is the enemy the Centauri Alliance faces, Okonjo's voice carried across the chamber. The swarm doesn't just destroy, it adapts. Each world it consumes makes it stronger, smarter, more efficient at extinction. And why should Earth risk its children in an alien war? The Chinese representative's question hung in the air. We've only just unified our own world, Admiral. Our fleet is needed here. Okonjo's lips curved into a slight smile. Computer, switch to training ground footage alpha. The horrifying scenes of alien destruction were replaced by something that made several council members gasp. Human beings performing what should have been impossible feats. Special Forces troops running through environments that would kill most Earth species, let alone alien life. Soldiers continuing to fight with injuries that should have been debilitating. Training exercises conducted under crushing gravitational forces. Ladies and gentlemen, the Centauri Alliance didn't just send a distress call. They specifically requested help from Deathworld species. Do you know why? Okonjo paused, letting the footage continue. Because their enemy adapts to perfect conditions. It expects to face species that evolved in gentle environments. But humanity, we're different. He gestured, and the display showed a comparison of Earth with standard garden worlds. Earth isn't just a death world. It's classified as Class 12. Our gravity is crushing by galactic standards. Our atmospheric pressure would kill most sentient species. We evolved alongside predators that forced us to become smarter, faster, more innovative. Our bodies can process toxins that would devastate other worlds. We heal from injuries that should be fatal. The Russian representative leaned forward. You're saying we're the monsters they're looking for? Exactly. Okonjo's voice carried a hint of pride. Our disadvantages are exactly what the galaxy needs right now. Every human who volunteers for this mission will undergo the most rigorous training we've ever devised. We're calling it the Deathworld Protocol. The footage shifted to show the training grounds in Antarctica, the Mariana Trench Base, and the Martian high-gravity facilities. Every volunteer must survive what we call Hell Week, training that pushes human adaptability to its absolute limits. We're not just sending soldiers, we're sending proof of what evolution on Earth created. The French representative studied the data scrolling past. These training parameters, they're beyond standard human limitations. That's the point, Okonjo replied. The swarm expects limitations. It expects species to break when pushed too far. But humans, we've spent our entire evolutionary history breaking limitations. Our bodies adapt. Our minds innovate. We survive conditions that should kill us, and then we learn to thrive in them. He brought up new data, showing the volunteer rates from military forces worldwide. We're not forcing anyone into this fight, but the response, it's unprecedented. When we told our forces that alien civilizations needed Earth's monsters to save them, the volunteer rates exceeded 80% in every branch. The UN Secretary General raised her hand. And what happens if we encounter threats even humans can't survive? Okonjo's response was immediate. Then we adapt. It's what humanity does best. Every major leap in our history came from facing conditions we shouldn't have survived. The swarm evolves by consuming. We evolve by surviving. That's the difference they're counting on. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity had always seen their homeworld as a harsh parent, making them work harder than other species might have had to. But now, those same harsh conditions might be the galaxy's best hope for survival. The deployment order is ready, Okonjo continued. The 7th Fleet has been retrofitted for extended deep space operations. Every ship carries environmental systems that can replicate Earth conditions. Our strength comes from our world, and we're bringing a piece of it with us. The voting system illuminated, and one by one, the council members made their choice. The result was clear. Humanity would answer the call. As the session ended, Okonjo received a priority message from the training grounds. The first batch of volunteers had already broken previous human endurance records. They weren't just surviving the enhanced gravity chambers and hostile environment simulations, they were mastering them. Looking out over the New York skyline, Okonjo allowed himself a moment of reflection. Humanity had spent centuries wondering if they were alone in the universe, wondering what first contact would be like. No one had expected it to come like this, with advanced civilizations begging for help from the creatures that evolved on a world most species considered hell. The monsters of Earth were about to show the galaxy why evolution had made them so formidable. The swarm was about to learn why you should never back a Deathworld species into a corner. Humanity wasn't just answering a distress call. They were about to remind the galaxy why survival of the fittest had produced something extraordinary on their harsh, unforgiving world. First contact between humanity and the Centauri Alliance was a masterclass in mutual terror and fascination. The human delegation, led by the newly promoted Commander Sarah Chen, had prepared for every possible scenario, except the one they got. The Alliance representatives took one look at the human delegation and collectively backed away, their chromatic skin patterns shifting to what their translators helpfully identified as panic purple. The creatures are leaking, one of the Alliance scientists announced, pointing at the slight sheen of sweat on the human soldiers' foreheads. The environmental controls in the meeting chamber had been set to Alliance standard, what humans would consider a balmy summer day. Chen tried to explain the concept of perspiration for temperature regulation, which only made things worse. The Alliance species, evolved in perfectly regulated environments, found the idea of bodies actively secreting anything to be horrifying. Then Captain Rodriguez smiled at them. The resulting chaos took 3 hours to settle. As Chen later wrote in her report, apparently, showing teeth is considered a death threat in 5 of the 8 Alliance species. The fact that we do it to show friendship is still causing their xenopsychologists to request stress leave. But the real shock came when the Alliance gave them a tour of their facilities. What they considered state-of-the-art combat training made human military observers exchange worried glances. Their high-gravity combat suits were designed for conditions that would be considered gentle on Earth. Their idea of extreme weather would barely register as a light drizzle in Seattle. The cultural divide reached its peak during what was supposed to be a routine cargo transfer. A loading mechanism failed, trapping an Alliance worker under what their species considered an impossibly heavy crate. Before anyone could power up their exolifters, Sergeant Sarah Williams casually lifted the crushing weight, asking if everyone was okay. The Alliance immediately classified humans as semi-cybernetic beings, refusing to believe that natural evolution could produce creatures capable of such feats. The resulting medical examination turned into a comedy of errors as Alliance doctors tried to find the non-existent cybernetic implants that must be augmenting human strength. But your bones, one Alliance doctor insisted, waving scanners at Williams. They're filled with microscopic chambers. Surely these are artificial reinforcements. That's just how human bones are, Williams tried to explain. It's called trabecular structure. All Earth vertebrates have it. The doctor's color pattern shifted to what the translator called existential dread yellow. The humans, for their part, were equally baffled by Alliance biology. Their new allies seemed almost fragile, with bodies evolved for perfect efficiency in stable environments. No redundant organs, no excess capacity, no ability to adapt to changing conditions. They were perfectly evolved for their worlds, which made them perfectly vulnerable to anything that disrupted those conditions. Everything changed during the diplomatic reception. The swarm, perhaps sensing the growing alliance, launched a surprise attack on the station. The Alliance species followed their deeply ingrained instincts, seeking shelter in designated safe zones. But the humans' response left them stunned. Commander Chen coordinated an immediate defense, using the very environmental systems the Alliance relied on as weapons. Human soldiers ran through depressurized sections without suits, holding their breath in vacuum for seemingly impossible times. They fought in conditions their allies considered unsurvivable, using their bodies' natural resilience as armor. "Watch the monsters work," one Alliance observer whispered, their color patterns showing a mix of fear and hope as humans repelled the attack through sheer physical capability and tactical improvisation. In the aftermath, as Alliance medical teams treated what they considered catastrophic injuries, but human medics called minor scratches, the dynamic between the species fundamentally shifted. The Alliance stopped seeing humans as primitive or crude. They began to understand that Earth's harsh evolution had produced exactly what they needed: creatures who thrived in conditions that should kill them. "Your bodies," an Alliance scientist said to Chen, studying the medical reports, "they're not just strong. They're overcomplicated, redundant, wasteful by our standards. You have organs that can take over for other organs, bones that repair themselves stronger than before, muscles that grow more powerful when damaged. You're not semi-cybernetic beings at all. You're something far more incredible. You're creatures that evolved expecting everything to go wrong." Chen smiled, carefully not showing teeth. On Earth, everything going wrong is just another Tuesday. Maybe that's exactly what the galaxy needs right now. The Alliance representative's colors shifted to what the translator simply rendered as awe. The cultural shock was far from over, but both sides were beginning to understand a fundamental truth. The very things that made humans seem primitive or crude to the Alliance were about to become their greatest asset in the war against the swarm. Commander Sarah Chen was reaching her wits' end trying to train Alliance species in combat tactics. Her latest attempt at teaching basic evasive maneuvers had ended with an entire squad frozen in place, their bodies locked in what humans had started calling survival shutdown. "They're not cowards," she explained to Admiral Okonjo during their daily briefing. "Their instincts are just completely different from ours. When we feel fear, we get a surge of adrenaline that makes us stronger, faster, more alert. When they feel fear, their bodies essentially try to play dead." The Admiral studied the training footage. "And we can't override millions of years of evolution in a few weeks." "No, sir. But—" Chen's neural implant flickered as she pulled up new data. "I think we've been approaching this all wrong. We've been trying to teach them to fight like humans. Maybe we need to learn how they fight first." Her breakthrough came during an observation of Alliance species in their natural social interactions. While humans had evolved as persistence hunters, using aggression and endurance to survive, the Alliance species had evolved through perfect cooperation. Their nervous systems were literally tuned to synchronize with each other. "Look at this," she pointed to neural scans. "When they work together, their efficiency increases exponentially. They're not built for fight or flight. They're built for perfect unity." Chen developed a revolutionary training program that played to these strengths. Instead of teaching individual combat skills, she focused on group coordination. Human soldiers would handle the aggressive elements while Alliance teams provided synchronized support. The new approach was put to the test sooner than anyone expected. The swarm launched a surprise attack on an outer defense station, expecting to find the usual disorganized resistance. Instead, they encountered something unprecedented. Alliance crews, working in perfect harmony, created overlapping fields of defensive fire that would have been impossible for individuals to coordinate. Their synchronized movements allowed them to predict and counter swarm attacks with uncanny precision. And in the gaps between their perfect formation, human shock troops struck with controlled violence that left the swarm reeling. "It's beautiful," one of the Alliance commanders commented, their color patterns shifting to deep blue appreciation as they watched the combined forces work. Like a dance, but with explosions. The real test came when a swarm breaching pod managed to dock with the station. The Alliance security team's first instinct was to seal off the section and wait for reinforcements. But Chen had been preparing them for this. "Remember your training," she called out as she led a mixed human Alliance team toward the breach. "You don't have to fight like us. Fight like you." What followed was a perfect demonstration of their new tactics. The Alliance team moved as one, their synchronized movements creating a complex pattern of coverage that the swarm's hive mind couldn't predict. Human soldiers exploited the gaps in the swarm's confusion, striking with the aggressive precision that made Deathworlders so formidable. "They're adapting," an Alliance officer warned as the swarm began to adjust its tactics. Chen grinned. "So are we." She watched as her training paid off. When an Alliance team member froze in fear, their human partners automatically covered them. When human aggression created openings, Alliance precision exploited them. Two entirely different evolutionary approaches to survival had become complementary rather than contradictory. The swarm was driven back, leaving behind more destroyed units than any previous defense had managed. In the aftermath, as human medics treated wounds and Alliance engineers repaired systems, Chen received an unexpected visitor. The Alliance High Commander, their skin shifting through patterns of deep respect, presented her with a ceremonial band. "We have a term," they explained, "for species that can adapt to work with others despite fundamental differences. We call them bridge builders. Today, humanity proved they are the greatest bridge builders we have ever encountered." Chen accepted the honor, understanding its deeper meaning. Humanity hadn't just taught the Alliance to fight. They had shown them that different paths to survival could strengthen each other. The very traits that made humans seem primitive to their allies had become the key to their combined survival. "We're not just teaching them to fight," she reported to Admiral Okonjo later. "We're learning from them too. Their unity, their coordination. It's making our own forces better. This isn't just about humans protecting weaker species anymore. This is about two different evolutionary strategies coming together to create something entirely new." The Admiral nodded, studying the battle reports. "The swarm evolves by consuming other species. We're evolving by learning from them. Maybe that's the real advantage Earth gave us. Not just the strength to survive, but the ability to adapt and grow stronger through cooperation rather than consumption." As if to emphasize his point, alarms began blaring. The swarm had launched another attack. But this time, as human and Alliance forces moved to their positions, there was no hesitation, no cultural confusion. Just the smooth integration of two very different species, each making the other stronger. The breaking point had become a turning point. The galaxy was about to learn that evolution had more than one path to victory. The destruction of the UEA's Thermopylae changed everything. The swarm had anticipated human tactics, had countered their aggression with cold precision. As the Alliance mourned what they considered an irreversible defeat, they witnessed something they'd never seen before: humans laughing in the face of disaster. Captain Rodriguez, one of the few survivors of the Thermopylae, stood before the combined fleet's tactical board with a grin that made his Alliance colleagues' color patterns shift nervously. "Ladies, gentlemen, and honored allies," he announced, "welcome to Murphy's War." "Who is this Murphy?" an Alliance commander asked, their translator struggling with the concept. "Another human military leader." "Murphy's Law," Rodriguez explained. is an old Earth saying. Anything that can go wrong will go wrong. Most species see that as a warning. Humans, we turned it into a tactical doctrine. What followed was a complete revolution in combat strategy. The Alliance watched in fascination as humans began implementing what they called controlled chaos. Every failure, every defeat, and every lost ship became a lesson, not in what to avoid, but in what to exploit. The first demonstration came at the Battle of Proxima Centauri. The Swarm, expecting standard military doctrine, encountered human ships deliberately using a gas giant's crushing pressure as a weapon. Alliance observers watched in horror as human crews pushed their ships to structural failure points, using the very act of their vessels breaking apart as weapons against the Swarm. But this defies all tactical logic. An Alliance strategist protested as they watched human ships deliberately fly into solar flares, using the radiation as cover for their attacks. The casualty rates are exactly what we planned for, Commander Chen explained. Earth species evolved expecting casualties. We planned for things to go wrong. That's our advantage. We're the only ones in this fight who aren't surprised when everything falls apart. The Alliance began documenting what they called human combat innovations, though many of them questioned whether insanity might be a better term. Using damaged ships as improvised missiles, deliberately triggering geological events on contested planets, converting environmental hazards into weapons, treating ship systems failures as tactical opportunities rather than disadvantages. When questioned about these seemingly suicidal tactics, a human surgeon simply shrugged. If it's stupid but it works, it isn't stupid. The Swarm, for the first time in its history, found itself facing an enemy that became more unpredictable with each defeat. Its hive mind couldn't process an adversary that treated failure as an advantage, that seemed to thrive on chaos rather than order. The turning point came during the defense of an Alliance colony world. The Swarm had adapted to human aggressive tactics, had prepared for their unconventional strategies. What they hadn't prepared for was humans deliberately crashing a damaged carrier into their command node, using the ship's reactor meltdown as an improvised EMP weapon. This is tactically unsound. An Alliance admiral protested as they watched the battle unfold. The calculated risk-to-reward ratio. Exactly, Rodriguez interrupted. We're not calculating risks the way you do. We're not even calculating them the way the Swarm does. We're using Earth logic. Survival doesn't care about mathematical perfection. The results were undeniable. The Swarm, engineered for perfect adaptation, couldn't adapt to an enemy that refused to follow logical patterns. Every time it developed countermeasures for human tactics, the humans would do something even more seemingly irrational. Alliance military academies began studying what they termed terrestrial chaos theory, the unique human ability to turn disadvantages into advantages, to weaponize failure itself. Their own forces, while unable to replicate human unpredictability, learned to support and enhance it. I think I understand now, an Alliance scientist told Chen after a particularly spectacular victory. Your species evolved in a world where survival often meant doing the impossible, where logic and calculation sometimes had to give way to desperate innovation. You're not just warriors, you're chaos incarnate. Chen smiled, remembering Earth's long history of unlikely victories and impossible survivals. The universe is chaos, she replied. Earth just taught us how to swim in it. As the war progressed, the Swarm found itself facing an enemy it couldn't categorize. Human tactics didn't just defy prediction. They defied the very concept of tactical analysis. Each defeat made them stronger. Each failure spawned new innovations, and each lost battle taught them new ways to weaponize disaster itself. Murphy's War had begun, and the galaxy was learning why Earth's children had survived every catastrophe their Deathworld had thrown at them. They hadn't just survived chaos. They had mastered it. The Swarm's adaptation to human tactics forced humanity to reveal another Deathworld trait. Their bodies were more resilient than their own technology. This revelation came during what would become known as the Battle of Broken Shields, when massive EMP waves disabled both Alliance and human ships alike. The Alliance crews, evolved for perfect environmental conditions, were immediately incapacitated. But across the battlefield, something unprecedented happened. Human crews continued fighting even as their environmental systems failed. Status report. Commander Chen barked through her failing comm system, the taste of recycled air growing stale in her lungs. Environmental controls are down across all decks, her XO reported. Life support failing. Artificial gravity fluctuating. Hull integrity at 60% and falling. Chen watched her crew continue their duties, barely slowed by conditions that should have been lethal. Humans were sweating freely now, their bodies naturally compensating for the rising temperature. As the gravity plating failed, they instinctively adapted to the changing conditions, using decades of zeroed training that their bodies had somehow made instinctive. How are they still functioning? An Alliance observer asked through their emergency comm. These conditions, they're unsurvivable. Chen couldn't help but laugh. Unsurvivable. This is nothing compared to what Earth throws at us. Our bodies evolved handling worse than this every time a storm hit. The revelation sparked a complete redesign of combat doctrine. Alliance engineers, watching humans operate in what they considered lethal conditions, realized something profound. Human bodies were effectively biological emergency systems. Your redundant organs, an Alliance medical officer noted with fascination. They're not inefficient design as we first thought. They're backup systems. Your entire biology is built around surviving system failures. The examples mounted as the battle continued. Humans functioning in oxygen levels that should have caused unconsciousness. Bodies automatically adjusting to radiation levels that would kill most species. Natural resistance to pressure changes that would rupture Alliance bodies. Continued cognitive function under stress levels that should shut down conscious thought. It's not just about being tough, Chen explained to the Allied command later. Earth's gravity, atmospheric pressure, temperature swings, they all forced our bodies to develop multiple ways of handling crisis. We're not just surviving these conditions. Our bodies expected them. The swarm, having adapted to target technological weaknesses, found itself facing an enemy that became more dangerous when their technology failed. Human crews, stripped of their advanced systems, fell back on biological adaptations honed by millions of years of terrestrial evolution. One particularly dramatic moment came when a human repair team needed to reach a critical system through a depressurized section. While Alliance engineers were calculating drone trajectories, the humans simply held their breath, demonstrating their species' remarkable ability to temporarily function without oxygen. 4 minutes, an Alliance observer noted in shock. They can survive without breathing for 4 minutes. Trained free divers from Earth can go longer, Chen replied. When your planet regularly tries to drown you, you learn to adapt. The Alliance began incorporating this new understanding into their combat strategy. Their advanced technology would protect human crews during normal operations, while humans would protect Alliance species when those systems failed. It was a perfect synthesis of biological and technological advancement. A swarm commander, captured during a later battle, revealed through interrogation that human biological resilience had forced them to fundamentally reassess their tactical approach. They had evolved to fight enemies who depended on technology. Humans, with their bodies adapted to Earth's harsh conditions, were effectively carrying backup systems the swarm couldn't disable. The Alliance formally classified humans as biological emergency systems, creatures whose very evolution had prepared them for disaster. Their technology wasn't a crutch, it was an enhancement to already formidable natural capabilities. You have to understand, Chen told a group of Alliance strategists, Earth didn't just make us strong. It made us redundant. Every critical system in our bodies has a backup, and usually a backup for that backup. We're not just survivors, we're living emergency protocols. As the war progressed, this unique human trait became increasingly central to Allied strategy. Ships were redesigned to accommodate human biological capabilities. Combat plans began incorporating what would happen when systems failed, knowing that human crews would continue functioning. The swarm had hoped to cripple their enemies by targeting their technology. Instead, they had forced humanity to demonstrate why evolution on a death world had produced creatures who didn't just survive catastrophic failure. They expected it. Earth's children were proving that sometimes the best emergency system wasn't a piece of technology. It was a body forged by millions of years of surviving the unsurvivable. Commander Sarah Chen stood before the holographic display, watching the swarm's latest attack patterns with growing recognition. Something about their movement, their hunting strategy, tickled at ancient memories encoded in her DNA. "They're not just machines," she muttered, her neural implant racing to connect patterns. "They're acting like predators, Earth predators." The revelation hit her like a physical blow. The swarm's behavior matched almost perfectly with Earth's prehistoric apex predators, the same ones that had shaped human evolution. They used overwhelming force, targeted the weak, and relied on superior numbers to exhaust their prey. "Call an emergency tactical meeting," she ordered, "and get me every xenobiologist who's studied Earth's prehistoric life." The combined Human Alliance Command Center buzzed with activity as Chen laid out her theory. The holographic display showed Earth's ancient predators alongside swarm attack patterns. "Look at this hunting formation." She pointed to a swarm assault. "It's nearly identical to how saber-toothed cats hunted. And these flanking maneuvers. Classic pack hunter behavior, like ancient wolves." The Alliance commanders watched with their color patterns shifting between fascination and concern as Chen began implementing what she called prehistoric countermeasures. Combat strategies drawn directly from how early humans had survived Earth's most dangerous predators. "Our ancestors didn't just survive these hunters," Chen explained. "They studied them, learned their patterns, and eventually became better predators themselves. Every human carries that knowledge in their genes." The new tactics seemed barbaric to Alliance observers, using bait and ambush techniques drawn from primitive hunting, implementing psychological warfare based on primal fear responses, turning the swarm's pack hunting instincts against itself, exploiting predator behavior patterns that hadn't changed in millions of years. "This is primitive," an Alliance commander protested as they watched humans deliberately trigger the swarm's hunting reflexes, leading them into prepared kill zones. "Primitive doesn't mean ineffective," Chen replied. "Earth's predators shaped us into what we are. Now we're going to remind the swarm why humans became the apex predators of our world." The first major test of these primitive tactics came during the defense of New Arcturus. The swarm, expecting typical military resistance, instead found themselves facing strategies evolved from millions of years of predator-prey interaction. Human forces deliberately appeared weak and disorganized, triggering the swarm's instinct to attack vulnerable targets. But when the swarm committed to the attack, they found themselves caught in the same type of traps that ancient humans had used to hunt creatures far larger and stronger than themselves. "They can't help themselves," Chen explained as they watched the swarm fall for the same tricks that had worked on Earth's prehistoric predators. "Their behavioral patterns are too deeply ingrained. Just like Earth's predators, they're slaves to their hunting instincts." The Alliance began to understand as they watched the humans work. Every movement, every tactic, seemed to draw on something deeper than military training. The humans were fighting with knowledge earned through millions of years of evolution, using strategies their species had developed when they were the prey rather than the predators. "Your species," an Alliance scientist noted, "didn't just survive Earth's predators. You internalized their lessons. You became better predators than the predators themselves." The turning point came when the swarm, frustrated by their mounting losses, launched an all-out attack on a seemingly vulnerable convoy. They found themselves caught in what ancient humans would have recognized as a prehistoric hunting trap, a killing ground designed by creatures who had learned from the very best killers Earth had ever produced. "We're not just fighting with technology or tactics," Chen told her crews as they watched the swarm's formations break apart. "We're fighting with the accumulated knowledge of every human ancestor who ever survived being hunted. We're fighting with lessons learned in blood and encoded in our very DNA." The swarm, for the first time, experienced what it was like to be prey. Their highly evolved hunting patterns, which had served them so well against civilized species, were being countered by strategies developed before humans had even invented writing. The Alliance formally recognized this new approach, though many of them found it disturbing. They had called for monsters from the stars, and instead they had gotten something far more interesting: creatures who had learned to outthink and outhunt the greatest predators their world had ever produced. As the battle continued, Chen couldn't help but appreciate the irony. The swarm had evolved to be perfect predators, but they were facing a species that had spent millions of years learning how to survive, how to think, and eventually become better predators than anything nature had ever produced. Earth's children were proving that sometimes the best way to fight a predator wasn't with advanced technology or civilized tactics. Sometimes you had to remember what it was like to be the prey that became the hunter. The final battle began with what the swarm believed was a perfect trap. They had cornered the combined human alliance fleet near a stellar remnant, a dying star that bathed the region in lethal radiation. No species, they calculated, could survive prolonged exposure to such conditions. Victory was inevitable. They were wrong. Commander Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Terran Dawn, her neural implant processing tactical data as she watched the swarm's forces close in. The radiation warnings were screaming red across every display, but she smiled. The swarm had just made their final mistake. "All human crews, initiate Protocol Lazarus," she broadcast across the fleet. "Alliance vessels, fall back to safe distance and maintain support positions." The Alliance commanders watched in astonishment as human ships began deliberately moving closer to the stellar remnant, using the very radiation that should have killed them as a shield. Impossible. A swarm transmission cut through their comms. "Your biological functions cannot sustain these conditions." Chen's laugh was cold. "You still don't understand what Earth made us, do you? We're not just survivors. We're the children of a world that tried to kill us every day of our evolution. Radiation. We evolved handling solar radiation that would kill most species. Pressure. Earth's gravity is a crushing force by galactic standards. Heat. Cold. Toxins. Our world threw all of that at us, and more. The battle that followed became a testament to everything that made humans unique in the galaxy. While Alliance ships provided precision fire support from safe distances, human crews executed maneuvers in radiation zones that would have killed most species instantly. Their bodies, evolved to handle Earth's harsh conditions, adapted to the extreme environment in ways the swarm's calculations couldn't predict. "Look at their cellular regeneration rates," an Alliance scientist reported in awe. "The radiation is damaging them. Yes, but their bodies are repairing the damage almost as fast as it occurs. It's like watching evolution in real time." The swarm's perfect trap became their perfect nightmare. They faced an enemy that turned lethal conditions into tactical advantages, that used environmental hazards as weapons, that seemed to become stronger rather than weaker under conditions that should have been fatal. "You wanted monsters," Chen broadcast as human ships tore through the swarm's formations. "Earth didn't just make us monsters, it made us unkillable." The Alliance forces watched in amazement as their human allies demonstrated exactly why evolution on a death world had produced something unique in the galaxy. Every disadvantage became an advantage. Every lethal condition became a tactical opportunity. The very things that should have killed them made them stronger. The swarm's retreat began as a tactical withdrawal and ended as a rout. For the first time in their history, they encountered a species that didn't just survive their attacks, it thrived on them. In the aftermath, as human crews received treatment for radiation exposure that would have killed most species, the Alliance High Command made a historic declaration. Earth was formally classified not as a death world, but as the Cradle of Guardians, a world whose harsh conditions had forged protectors for the entire galaxy. "We called for monsters," the Alliance High Commander told Chen during the victory ceremony, their color patterns showing deep respect. "Instead, we got something far better. We got creatures shaped by the most unforgiving world in known space, who used that harsh upbringing not to destroy, but to protect." Chen looked out at the combined fleet, seeing human and Alliance ships working together in perfect harmony. "Earth didn't just make us strong," she replied. "It made us adaptable. And maybe that's what the galaxy needed most. Creatures who could take everything the universe threw at them and turn it into an advantage." The war had changed more than just the balance of power in the galaxy. It had changed how every species viewed evolution itself. The very conditions that had made Earth seem like a handicap had produced exactly the allies the galaxy needed. As the fleet began its journey home, Chen received one final message from the swarm's high command. "We consumed worlds to evolve. You evolved by surviving your world. We understand now why we could not defeat you. You are not just warriors or survivors. You are evolution's finest work, creatures forged in fire and darkness, who chose to use that strength to protect rather than destroy." The children of Earth had proven that sometimes the harshest cradle produces the strongest guardians. Their death world had not been a curse but a forge, creating beings who could face the universe's greatest horrors and emerge stronger. The monsters of Earth had become the heroes of the galaxy, and their greatest weakness had proven to be their greatest strength.